In this demonstration, we'll be going over three main topics today. The first one will be working with text, and we'll go over the fundamentals of text in Adobe Animate. And the second step will be how to generate gradients using Animate, using the gradient panel along with the gradient transform tool. And the third thing, and probably the biggest of all, will be to create movie clips and buttons to play songs and start these songs inside of our file. I'm going to show you a finished version that I actually have online right now over in Firefox. Here's the text, and I'll explain that as I get to it, but let's just take a quick look at these songs. They're progress bars, and these are the start buttons, and these are the stop buttons. So if I start the first one, you hear the music play, and you can see an animation moving along at the same progress of the song. The red box will stop the song, and that works the same for both of them. Just like that. Okay, so let's go back over to Adobe Animate and quickly look at our file here. Everything was created in one frame. I do have one layer for the buttons. Not that it was really needed, but I did keep my songs in separate layers, as you can see here. The gradients, kind of a topical difference, so I kept them on their own layer, and the text elements as well, as you can see here. Let me just go back to my selection tool. And the background was just created by adding a stage color in our page properties over here. Okay. And yes, this is an HTML5 formatted file. So if I quickly go over to the code under actions, let me just pull this in here. We do have most of our code inside of frame 1 on scene 1, but the songs themselves are inside of movie clips, which you can see indicated here. And I do have a stop command on frame 1 of each of those movie clips. And you can see here the inside of that movie clip. And when we get to that, I'll explain the logic on how that was built as well. But in essence, that's our code. Again, most of it will be in frame 1 on the scene 1 timeline, as you can see here. Okay. So let's start a new file, and we'll just start with the basics of the text. Just going to go File, New. And I'm just going to go with the small standard size, but again, ensure that you're on HTML5 canvas. Click Create. And typically, we should do a Save As immediately when we start a file. So that's what I will do here, Save As. And I do have a folder here for my HTML5 Animate stuff, so why don't I just call that HTML5 Animate 2. And save. For you, use your last name and the lesson number, whatever that happens to be. Okay, so I've got my blank slate here. I think I'm just going to quickly build up some layers. So I'll do the first one for buttons, and I am going to name each one here quickly. Song 1. Song 2. Okay. And let's see here, gradients. And then one for my text examples. And one for my code, which I'll call actions. Okay, definitely save that. Command S on the keyboard, Control S on the PC. And we'll get started with text. So basically, let me just highlight my text layer. There's two fundamental ways to generate your text. Now, the first way of initiating text is known as point text, and we initiate it with our text tool, and of course in combination with our properties for characters and paragraphs. So point text is basically clicking and typing. If you need to do a return, you actually have to do it physically on the keyboard. So I'll just type in very quickly some nonsense words here, just to make an example that it just keeps going and going and going and going. Okay. If you want to do a return, I can insert my cursor here, or while I'm typing, of course, I can type return, and so on. Okay. So point text, you force your returns. Otherwise, it types on one straight line. So let me actually just go in with my selection tool and delete that. You see here I can move it around as much as I want. And I'll start one fresh. So I'm going to click up here and I'll just start point text. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to my other file, copy the text, paste it over here. Let me go in here. So while you're on your text tool, you can highlight text, copy it. And let's see here, I'll bounce back to my new file. And again, if I want to replace this text, I'll just highlight all of that. And I'm just going to go Command V on the Mac, Control V on the PC. And that's how you can paste it in. And I can always go in and manipulate it. You can see my I-beam shows up when I go over the text. And otherwise, I can just grab that line, or just highlight rather, where I click in. I can click in and also go Command A to select all, to replace it with new typing, and so on. But there's your I-beam to select or insert. Okay, if I want to format it differently, I highlight what I want to format, and I can increase or decrease the size using my properties panel. And you can see here I'm using the slider feature over top of the numbers. I can change the fill color here, of course. And if I deselect, you'll see that color change. Okay, so if I want to change that back, I would select it and make my changes. So anytime you want to make a change to a character or a series of characters, it must be selected. So that there in itself is point text. Let me click on my selection tool and show you how to create what's called area text. Area text is again initiated with the text tool. And you click and drag to designate a specific width basically to your text box. I'm just going to click over here. Oh, I clicked once to deselect. Now I'll click and drag. And that's where my text box will be initiated. So again, if I start to type, I'll just make nonsense words with spaces. You see how it flows, and it will allow for as much as I add to the box. So basically, I'm dictating the width of a text box. Okay. So I'm going to select that and highlight it and delete it quickly and initiate another text box here by clicking and dragging across. And again, I will go over here and cheat and select all the text in this text box and copy it, and then come back to my new text box and just go into it here. Oh, you know what? Because I didn't add any characters, it actually didn't take. So let me just initiate that again here and paste. There we go. That can always be adjusted. And you see when I adjust it, it does reflow. It can be adjusted after the fact as well. I could go away and click away from it, deselect it, come back, select it, and I can just grab these handles to make it reflow. And that is what we call area text. Okay, so I'm just going to save my file.